The trees came up too fast. 1 second. Blue sky. Engine hum. The Amazon a green blur far below. The next, silence where the engine should have been. Then the shriek of metal tearing through a canopy 60 meters tall, branches exploding through the windscreen, the world spinning, folding, crashing into a horrible stillness. When Maria opened her eyes, she was bleeding. The cockpit was crushed. Her children were screaming. Her husband was not moving. She was 34 years old. She had never slept outdoors in her life. This is the true story of how one ordinary family survived 3 weeks lost in the heart of the Amazon and refused to die. Carlos Martins was an engineer from Manaus. Practical, calm, the kind of man who fixed things. His wife Maria taught primary school and remembered every student's name. Their son Lucas was 11, serious beyond his years. Their daughter Anna was 7, curious about everything. It was July 1993. Carlos had taken a survey contract deep in Amazonas state and brought his family for the first leg, a 90-minute charter flight over the jungle to a small regional airstrip. The plane was a twin-engine Cessna. The pilot was experienced B. The weather that morning was perfect. Anna spent the whole flight with her face pressed against the window, watching the Amazon unfold below like an ocean with no shore. Nobody was afraid. There was no reason to be. Little did they know. Hidden inside a cloud mass ahead, a storm was already building. The turbulence came without warning. The plane bucked hard. Anna screamed. The pilot's voice came through, calm, controlled, telling them to keep belts tight. Then the first engine coughed. Carlos looked at Maria B. In that single exchanged glance, no words needed. They both understood. The storm swallowed them. Rain hammered the windscreen to white. The radio crackled, fragmented, then died. The second engine stuttered. The Amazon, no longer distant, rushed upward at terrifying speed. The impact was not an explosion. It was worse. A long, grinding, shrieking tear through the canopy, branches detonating through the cabin, the fuselage twisting, luggage flying, the world folding sideways until everything stopped. The pilot did not survive. Maria found Anna still strapped in, dazed, bleeding from her forehead, but alive. Lucas had a deep gash on his leg. Carlos was unconscious. She shook him twice before his eyes opened, all 4 of them breathing. All 4 of them alive. Fuel was leaking. Carlos smelled it immediately. He pulled them 30 meters from the wreckage and went back alone to salvage what he could. A first aid kit, 3 water bottles, some food, a knife, a lighter. Not much, but enough to begin. The first night was the longest of their lives. They huddled under a rain jacket stretched between roots, listening to the Amazon scream around them. Howler monkeys, insects, things without names. Something large moved through the undergrowth twice. Carlos held a branch across his knees until dawn and said nothing. The water lasted 3 days. The food lasted 6. After that, Carlos did what engineers do. He observed and adapted. He watched which fruits the birds ate and ate the same. He found grubs in rotting wood and made Lucas eat them, explaining quietly that protein was protein and survival was not about comfort. Lucas ate them without complaint. He was 11 years old and he understood. Anna's forehead wound closed, but by day 5 she had a fever. The antiseptic was gone, used on Lucas's infected leg gash. Maria had nothing left. She pressed cool stream water against her daughter's forehead through the nights and talked to her without stopping. Stories, songs, nonsense, anything to keep the thread between them alive. On the 8th night the jaguar came. Carlos had built a loose perimeter of branches around camp, enough to make noise if crossed. At 2 in the morning, several snapped in sequence. 2 amber eyes appeared at the edge of the firelight. The jaguar stood and assessed them for 30 seconds that felt like a lifetime. Carlos stared back and did not move. Then the cat turned and vanished without a sound. Nobody spoke for a long time after. By day 10, Maria's fractured left arm had swollen to twice its size. Carlos had reset it as best he could, a process that made her bite down on folded cloth to keep from screaming in front of the children. She fashioned a splint from sticks and torn clothing and kept moving. The pain was constant. She ignored it the way only mothers can ignore things that would break anyone else. Day 11 was when she almost lost Carlos. He went quiet, not the focused quiet of a thinking man, but the hollow quiet of a man disappearing inside himself. Maria watched her husband's eyes go flat and understood that she was now the one holding them together. She told Lucas his father was exhausted and that exhaustion was allowed. She told Anna they were on an adventure, and adventures always ended with coming home. Every morning she opened her eyes to pain and rot and heat and told herself, "Today is the day." She made herself believe it. On day 17, Lucas found the river. He was 20 meters from camp collecting water when the jungle floor simply opened onto a wide, slow-moving river. Real water, not a trickle. He ran back, screaming. Carlos came alive for the first time in days. A river meant downstream. Downstream meant people. They had no boat, but they could walk the bank. And walking the bank meant they were no longer circling in the dark. They moved at dawn the next morning. Maria's arm was agony on the uneven ground. Anna asked every 20 minutes if they were nearly there. Carlos said yes, nearly there, every single time, and kept walking. On day 19, they heard an engine. Somewhere on the river, a small outboard motor, a boat. Carlos ran to the bank and screamed. Maria screamed. Lucas screamed. Anna, not fully understanding but understanding it mattered, screamed with everything she had. 4 voices tearing through the Amazon, aimed at a sound on the water. The engine slowed. Then it grew louder. It was coming toward them. The boat belonged to Joachim, a rubber tapper, who knew every bend of that river by heart. He heard the screaming, thought briefly it was river birds, heard it again, and knew better. He pushed through the reeds and found them. He almost didn't recognize them as a family. They were so thin, so destroyed, so covered in jungle and damage that his first thought was that they were from a remote indigenous community. It was the children's clothing, torn, filthy, but modern, that told him otherwise. Maria collapsed the moment she saw him. Not from weakness, she had walked 19 days on a fractured arm through the Amazon, but because her body finally understood it was allowed to stop, Carlos sat down on the riverbank and put his face in his hands. Within 4 hours, a rescue team reached them by river. By nightfall, all 4 were in a hospital. Maria needed surgery on her arm. Lucas's wound required aggressive infection treatment. Carlos had lost 20 kilograms. Anna, the smallest and most fragile, had somehow suffered the least. Her fever had broken on day 15 and never returned. 3 weeks in hospital, then home. B. On the day they were discharged, Carlos told a reporter, "The jungle does not want to kill you. It simply does not care whether you live or die. The caring that you have to bring yourself 3 weeks." B. 4 people. 1 fractured arm, 1 jaguar, 19 days of hunger, and a river that saved them. Carlos later worked with Brazilian emergency services, improving Amazon rescue protocols. Maria returned to teaching. B. Lucas has spoken publicly about those 3 weeks as the experience that made him who he is. Anna says she barely remembers it. B. Maybe that is the jungle's one small mercy. What this family's story teaches is not complicated. B. The will to survive is not one dramatic decision. It is 1,000 small ones. Eat the grub, split the arm, walk the next step, scream at the river even when you are not sure anyone is listening. B. Someone was listening. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe to WW Miracles for more real survival miracles from around the world. Comment below, which impossible survival story do you want to see next?